Today, we're going to take a look at a seemingly new UI design trend, and I'm also going to show you how to use them, and that is colored drop shadows, very colorful gradients, and more. Before we begin, today's video is sponsored by Milanote, which is a tool that I've featured on this channel before that I use for planning my creative projects. Now, Milanote is different than traditional software because it's more like working on a wall in a creative studio. You can use it for planning your project so that all the info is stored in a central location. You can easily create mood boards, and all of your work can be shared with colleagues and clients with real-time collaboration. Milanote is free to try, so click on the top link here in the description of the YouTube video and give it a shot. Hey everyone, what's up? Gary Simon of CourseSatchel.com. So today we're going to take a look at a new UI design trend that I'm seeing becoming more and more popular, and it's basically it's diverging a little bit from the minimalistic flat design trend that we've been in for a real long time. And I took some of these examples and I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. So here's one example that I'm talking about, and we've seen these vibrant UI designs quite a bit, but we're seeing the use of gradients quite a bit, even in UI elements such as this call to action button. There's also an example right here. We're seeing this real soft shadows and soft like drop shadows and gradients, and they're colored of all things. And it's very interesting because they look pretty good. We're seeing gradients here, gradients on the buttons. We're also seeing gradients, real soft, vibrant gradients in other areas. We're even seeing gradients that are going from one hue to another hue. And the overall effect is that they are very, very vibrant, and they bring a lot of color and life to your designs, as we can see. So in this quick tutorial, I'm going to show you exactly how you can start using these colored gradients that are in different hues, and also drop shadows. Drop shadows is one of those things that I've noticed when I do my UI design critique show on Fridays, maybe once a month now, that they get it wrong. They make their shadows just stand out way too much. So I have a very specific rule on how to use them, both desaturated shadows that are just in the black and white realm, and also colored shadows as well. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. I'll shut up now and let's get started. All right, so I'm here in Adobe XD. You could follow along with any other software, be that Figma, Sketch, whatever. And just for this demonstration, I'm gonna use a phone template. Doesn't matter what you use though, because this is all dealing just with a very specific topic that doesn't really matter what you use. So we're just gonna have a series of panels just to demonstrate this. You could apply this to many different UI components, but I'm just gonna have sort of like a slider / draggable carousel just of containers or panels that contain some information such as a title, description, whatever. So I'm going to take the rectangle tool, and we're first going to just demonstrate where we're at for a long time in terms of the common UI design trends for color, and that is flat. For a long time we've had flat, and before that, I would say pre-2011, 2012 or so, we were really into the shadows, the gradients, the glossy, reflective look, and that hasn't come back. But what has come back, of course, is the gradients, and I want to just demonstrate where we're at and then where we're going to. So I'm just going to have a little bit of a border radius. This is still a popular thing, although still I see UI designs with completely right angles. That's fine. This isn't really anything of much concern. I'm gonna get rid of the border. Fortunately, borders are still, we don't see borders anymore. We used to see borders a lot, but not anymore. And so for the fill, we'll choose something right around here, maybe slightly lighter. Okay. And what we'll do is just add just some type real quick up here. We'll make it white so we can have maximum contrast for good readability. We're going to use Nunito. You know what? I think I'm switching to Nunito, or however it's pronounced. Maybe we're not going to be messing around with Montserrat anymore. It's been like a solid year. All right, let's make that bold. That's good. No, let's not duplicate that. Let's get a new line here. All right, right around, I don't know, I'd say like this far. And We're going to bring that size down quite a bit, maybe around 14. Make it regular. And then I'm going to use a plugin real quickly, lorem ipsum, fill with placeholder, insert. Okay. And that works pretty well. Nothing exciting again. We're just doing some quick setup work. We're going to have a call to action button as well. And we'll mess around with the color on this too. Let's bring that all the way in. No border, of course. I wish they wouldn't have borders applied to things by default because I almost never use them. Maybe we should submit a feature request for that. And we're going to add in a continue button. I don't know. Something like that. And we'll just make it black. And scale it up just a bit and then center it up here vertically. And there we go. We have a very simple panel. And there's nothing really wrong with this from what I see. So let's just, yeah, right there is pretty good. Also, just to give this some context here, I'm going to put in just like a quick header. So we'll say drop shadows. Why is it centering by default? I don't know. Maybe because that's what I did last time. All right, so we're going to increase this. We're going to make it bold real quickly. Drop shadows, gradients, color. We'll make color. No, don't want to do that. There we go. There. That's good. Okay, pretty happy with this. And yeah, so that's our flat design, and that's what we were at for a long time. Let's slowly add to this though. So we're going to duplicate the artboard with Control D, and now let's add a gradient here. All right, so this is what we're starting to see. So let's do a linear gradient. We can drag these around. Of course, this is all something we can control with CSS gradients as well in terms of the angle. And let's put in, leave this right around here. And for the second color picker, if we do around the same area, it's going to look exactly the same. What we're seeing, I'm starting to see is we're not just changing the darkness or the brightness value. We're changing the hue as well. So if we drag this up, we'll start to see how it changes the appearance just a bit. And it provides for a very cool effect. And you can go down further to really make it a little bit more vibrant by introducing different colors. And these still pretty much all work. Then you get into this, and that's a little bit too much. So you have certain color combinations that don't work very well, especially when we look in the middle, it looks grayish, and that just kills the whole look. This actually works as well. So a lot of it is up to you, and it is subjective as long as you don't get into these weird color crashing combinations like this. So it all depends. So let's go ahead and we'll leave it right around there. I like that. Let's also, I'm going to bold these up too. There we go. Dog is barking. Today's July 4th. I'm actually recording this. They're freaking out, of course, as they always do during fireworks. All right, so now this in of itself, still very solid. Let's go ahead and take it a step further and add a drop shadow. All right, so drop shadow is one of those things when, I've been critiquing, doing the Friday live shows where I critique people's UI designs. So many people get drop shadows wrong. So I'm going to introduce a role that you pretty much can't go wrong with. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We're going to select this container. We're going to choose the shadow option right here. By default, it puts you at 0 on X, Y is 3, and then the blur radius is 6. Let's get these out a little bit further, maybe around 7 and 7. And again, it could just be a straight down shadow where the X is 0. That's fine. Not a big deal. I'm just choosing to make it offset a little bit, especially because the gradient radius is also angled this way. And this right here isn't actually even bad. It's pretty solid, but let me tell you what I'm talking about in terms of the requirement. We could see the shadow is completely black, but the opacity is at 16%. That works pretty well. If you end up going beyond, I'm going to drag this up, beyond 30% or to around 40, it becomes too much. It's a no, in my opinion. So watch what happens to the edge, and let me tell you why. So watch what happens to the edge of this container here, and look at the edge that the shadow is on. So the right and bottom edge. Right now, it's pretty solid in terms of contrast. So it's a contrast issue that becomes the problem if you make your shadows stand out too much. Right now, it's still pretty good. And where are we at in terms of the shadow? Let's click over here. We're at 32%. It's still solid right here. If we go up, look at that edge. It becomes hard to see at a certain point. And that's what you don't want. That's what makes it look like a cheap design. You're trying to make that shadow come out too much. You don't want that. So a general rule of thumb, don't go beyond around 30%, maybe 35, maybe just barely 40, depending on the color that you have right here. But you want that contrast to be solid, but also you want to see just a little bit of a shadow. So leaving around 26, 25%, this is pretty solid. This is a type of shadow that we would see. I'm even seeing them with an even bigger blur radius sometimes as well. So we can kick this up to like 11, and this still works just fine. Again, it's subtle, and that's what you want it to be. Let's go ahead and take it a step further though. Let's introduce a colored drop shadow. All right, so now we're getting into scary territory here. What we can do to do this, let's take the color picker and choose either the purple up here or this sort of like a bluish, royal bluish color down here. Let's just go with purple. Now when we do that by default, it is too much. I would not recommend doing this. We need to lighten it up so that we can increase the contrast. Once again, same scenario over here, so that we can increase the contrast of the container so we can clearly see the container where it begins and ends. So going back to our shadow, all we have to do is just bring this over here. And this works. Let's try this color. Come out here around the middle, maybe to the left a little bit. And again, really, if you think about this as being 0% and this as being 100% in terms of lightness, then this is around that 30% rule right here. And this works. Either color works. If you try different colors that aren't a part of this, usually it won't look very good. So if I drag the, oops, wrong one. If I get back to my shadow and I drag the hue, there we go. If we drag the hue into other colors, it starts to look strange. So use a familiar color, or in other words, a color that's a part of your gradient, and it will look much better. So right around there works pretty decently. I think I want to go with maybe the darker, the bluish option. Let me get back here. And then you can push it up just slightly. And there you go. So that is just one use case. That's one context where this works with lighter backgrounds. I'm going to show you how to apply the same effect on different backgrounds that are perhaps darker or colored as well. Just so we can get more experience practicing with this sort of thing, I'm going to duplicate this over here. And then temporarily, I'm going to take this. We're at 375 width currently. We're going to drag it out so we have enough space for like 4 of these. All right, so we'll take this, and actually to demonstrate before I get to that, let's color this button as well. This button works perfectly as is, but what if you wanted to even get a little bit more crazy and add a gradient on the button? So you have some things you have to worry about. Now we're dealing with an inverse effect. Right now, or before, we were worried about a light background, a white background, versus our container. We wanted that contrast. Well, now we're dealing with a darker background, and we need our button or our call to action to really stick out well, and so it has to be lighter. So that's a key concept if you're going to play around with color on the button, and you're going to go outside of the realm of maximum contrast, which we have here with white. So if we change the color here to a gradient, all right, and let's leave it right there. The light. Let's leave that at white, and then take this here at the bottom and choosing around one of the hues that we were using in the gradient above. And there we go. Right around that 30% roll area. If we get beyond that, it starts to become a little bit too much. Coming around here works. We can go up a little bit lighter or down to the blue. Either one works quite well. And if you want, you can make this more of a linear gradient as opposed to being a gradient that's vertical. I'm seeing a lot of this as well. So really, it is completely and entirely up to you. All right. So let's do the other idea where we just experiment with different color gradients and options here. So if I take this, we'll just repeat grid it. There we go. Ungroup it. And then just experiment with a different color options. So there's a lot that you can play around with here. So if we double click into that and we change the first color picker here, just experiment with it. We've immediately changed this. Now this is more, these are both blue. This is a little bit more on the purple side. See, now that's, we're losing our contrast. So you would either want to come down further. And you can come down over here. And then notice what happens to the color once we're really changing up the color of this panel. This pink gradient that we have does not look good at all. So if we bring it down over here, around the same hue, it suddenly works very easily. So once again, maybe we'll do one more because I don't want to get a little bit too repetitive. So we can do maybe one that's maybe in an oranger area. Let's see here. And this one, that could possibly work. This is a definite no. This possibly works right there. And again, coming here to our button, we could change maybe onto the yellows work well with that one. And there we go. Very cool stuff. Of course, the shadow doesn't work on this color because it's a completely different hue and they don't really mix well. So if we bring this down, and experiment a little bit with it, we can drop it down in terms of the saturation. And that one works quite well with the colors that I'm right there for a colored drop shadow at least. Of course, you can always completely desaturate them right here and they will work just as well. And then this one, this drop shadow probably could use a little bit of work, a little bit more matching it up a little bit. So that could work as well. All right, very, very cool. So one last thing I wanted to show is, okay, these are all examples that work pretty well here on white or light backgrounds. What if we wanted to give one of the backgrounds, we'll take our latest one right here, a gradient as well? Well, we can do that. Let's go ahead to our appearance and choose linear gradient. So this looks horrendous because of this mid-gray that's placed on here. So taking it, let's choose a hue that's around our button area and make it very light. And look how cool that is. That works very well. Nice. Let's duplicate this. Let's bring it over here. And let's say, for instance, we wanted to kind of inverse this. What if we wanted this gradient to be the background? How would we do that? All right, well, let's take this. Come over here. Now it's a solid. Now we have to change it to linear again. Take this color picker and go down here a little bit more. All right, so now we have a lot of issues on our foreground element because our background has been inverted. So you wouldn't want to use this for many reasons. First, anything that's black up here, because it's on the darker side for the color, we're going to want to make white. And if we have color in here, probably want to make it in the mid area just so that we can see. Make this period white as well. All right, and then we want to inverse what we did up here. So we had a light, very light gradient, and that's what we're going to want to do with this element right here. So we take, we'll make this one maybe right around there, and then we'll make this color picker light. All right, and then we can also, I know right now it looks really ugly. We'll take this. We could either make it black or one of these colors up here. Make this darker. Now, the shadow looks horrendous, right? Because shadows are supposed to be darker. That's what a shadow is. But in our case, it's lighter. So we can either just get rid of it completely, or if we want a shadow, we're going to come down here to black and then take down right around 30%. And now it looks a lot better. The button is way, way, way off. We're going to want to use a darker button because the light, the background here is lighter. This is on the lighter side. So, and just to prove that's on the lighter side, if we get this color picker and we can see it's on the lighter side of the spectrum in terms of darkness and its value. So for maximum contrast, we want to make this darker. So let's go to a solid color here. White could still work because you can still see it, but if you really want it to stand out, you can either do that, or we can choose this color and of course make the foreground type element white. All right, and this works completely well. Of course, you can go ahead and try to add another shadow here, but then you're risking doing a little bit too much with it. So hopefully this example here has really demonstrated how you can use shadows sort of in this new trendy way in gradients to an effect that can really liven up and brighten up your project. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to subscribe, of course, and also let me know what you think in the comments about colored gradients and colored shadows. All right, see you guys soon. Goodbye.